Aye.
We will backtrack to 4.02, and if you all would also join us, we will honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, fast track straight to report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. We have some special guests tonight that are joining us virtually, and our friends from Toyota, Missouri are on the call, and Leah Ameling, I believe, and Donna Wharf. I can't see who else. Let me look to see who else is on the call. Wes is on. Thank you, Wes, for joining us tonight. So I see Wes, Donna, and Leah. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. Well, Leah, just want to say, of course, thank you. I'd like for Toyota to share some words to the board, and then you know how we're just so appreciative of the gift, and it's going to make a huge difference in the lives of our students. So, turning things over to you and Donna and Wes. I'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah, I would love, hopefully Wes is able to join and can unmute. I see you there. If you don't mind just sharing a few words, I think you're muted right now. But if you're unable to unmute, then I would be happy to help out. Give me the thumbs up if that's what you need, Wes. Oh, can we hear you now? Still no audio? Welcome to the time of COVID.
Can you hear us, Wes?
I don't think you can. Everyone?
Hello.
We can hear you now.
Oh, great. I can finally hear you too.
Very good.
Did I miss anything?
We were waiting on you, Wes. This is Mark Penny. I just want to say, thank you to you and Leah and Donna, and we're just so proud of the partnership and the relationship we have with Toyota, Missouri, and I just kind of turn things over to you or Leah and Donna. Any comments you'd like to make on behalf of Toyota, Missouri?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate, thank you first for dealing with my audio problems here and waiting for me. I really appreciate you inviting us to join the meeting today. You know, this coronavirus risk has really been quite a thing, hasn't it? It's required us to make many adjustments here at the plant, just as you are within the school system. We both have a lot of people that we care deeply about, and it's our responsibility as leaders to take care of them, and we're doing that here, and it's not an easy task. So, our internal policies prohibit us today in person today, so I appreciate you for allowing us to join virtually. And also, I'll tell you, I'm really thankful that this company, that Toyota, is able to help meet your needs by providing, this one-to-one technology for your students. My kids are long out of school now. You can tell I'm an old guy. But, if I was a parent navigating this pandemic situation, I would really appreciate a school district such as this one, kind of working to remove the barriers so that my children can continue their education, without any delays. So on behalf of our team members with students in the school system, I just want to thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you, Wes. That means a lot. And I really appreciate your remarks.
Yeah, as for Toyota, we're pretty good at closely watching data trends and adjusting quickly to ensure good results. And this grant was provided by the Toyota USA Foundation. In normal times, we have a mission to sustain STEM education. But this isn't normal times, and we recognize the need to modify what we're doing. What good is STEM education programs if we don't have a method to deliver it? If we can't deploy it to our students. So this grant was part of a bigger $3.3 million grant given across 13 states where our company does business is helping us to kind of close the gap in that digital divide. So I'll tell you, I just couldn't be more blessed to work with a company with this heart. I'm gonna share something with you. I don't know, it's not so confidential anymore, but this COVID pandemic, during the 7 weeks that our entire company was shut down, not a team member lost a paycheck. And we've seen a $1 billion loss this year as a result of this pandemic, and yet our company continues to invest in our communities and school system. And I couldn't be more blessed to work for this company. And I'll tell you, I'm not a Troy, Missouri native. I transferred here 5 short years ago. But just to be able to sit here today and know that our company is continuing and will continue to support this community is just, I'm humbled. And I'm humbled to lead this team here. So I look forward to a very long partnership with the school system here. So thank you for inviting us today.
Thank you, Wes. It means a lot. And when we heard about this opportunity, putting more technology in the hands of our students was really my goal, and it's something that the Board of Education and I have been very focused on for many years now. And this really completes the kindergarten through 12th grade one-to-one iPad initiative that our district embarked upon in the 2016-2017 school year. So to be able to do that just a little over 4 years has really been very impressive as a community member and also as a parent of a child in our school system. But really what we're also trying to really improve is our student achievement and prepare your 21st century workforce at Toyota, Missouri is something we're wanting to do as well. This district is very focused on workforce development, and as you know, we are embarking on our partnership with Rankin Technical College, and of course you and I and Leah and Donna and Nani, we've had great conversations about what that might look like. So, but we're also very excited to be your neighbors out at 97 Enterprise Way with our new transportation facility. We just left that tonight, and we're going to open that up, I think November the 3rd is when that's going to open. So we just really appreciate the support, and to know that we were the only school district in Missouri that received these funds is also very well noted. There's 517 other school districts, and so to know that we have the support of Toyota, Missouri is really warms my heart, and we don't want to let you down. We are very focused on Manufacturing Day. We've been doing that for several years. Leah has always had a great relationship with Audrey Hennery, our community relations specialist, and so those are just some things that we're very proud of, but we're most excited about the future. And Toyota certainly is leading the way in that regard in our area and the United States and in the world when it comes to the product that you guys make. So, and many of our parents, of course, are your employees too. So we want to thank them for their support. And but you're right about the support and just the tax effort that Toyota, Missouri does for the Lincoln County R3 School District. We're our largest taxing entity, and so we just really appreciate all the support, much less the $200,000 gift. So. Leah, Donna, anything else? I just want to. Leah knows how excited I was when I got this email. I picked up the phone and I called her immediately, and I just said, I'm almost speechless that we would be awarded this wonderful opportunity. So I'm just very appreciative, and on behalf of our more than 6,700 students, we appreciate your support.
You know, Dr. Penny, you mentioned Manufacturing Day. I'll tell you, even though we did that virtually this year, that seems to be quite successful. You know, there's only so many students that we can put through our facility in a day, but it seems as though we reach so many more students through virtual Manufacturing Day than we might otherwise have. So, I was about this result of it.
I think this COVID, West, has allowed us to practice what we preach as far as collaboration and communication skills. And of course, you know, the face-to-face is always important, but when we can't do that, we have to do the second best thing. And you're right, we can reach more people. Who knows, maybe next time it's in Japan and we have our choice students, you know, communicating with students in Japan around, you know, what's going on over there in that learning opportunity. So we've got the tools to be able to do that. We have Zoom, and we also have Google Meets. So we are ready. We've been able to really invest very heavily with technology to help us with our virtual learning students as well. You may not know this, we have over 1,700 students in virtual learning right now in our school district. So we're really trying our best to meet their needs as well. So that's larger than many other school districts in our area, just in our virtual learners.
Well, thanks for having us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Leah, Donna, Wes, again, thank you so much for your wonderful remarks, and we appreciate the partnership. Anything else from the board to our friends from Toyota? Thank you. Yeah. Leah, did you have a remark?
No, I just wanted to say thank you very much for having us, and really appreciate it. Always good to talk with you guys.
Our board says thank you as well.
All right, and I'll start working on that Japan Manufacturing Day event.
Well, I will tell you this, one of our most popular virtual courses with Launch is Japanese. And it's very difficult for us to hire a Japanese instructor for Troy R3, but our students can learn the foreign language of Japanese through our Launch virtual program. So who knows where that leads us.
Very interesting. Thank you.
all.
Thank you for the great partnership. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Donna. Tell Nani we said hello.
Will do.
All right. Bye now.
Bye. Thank you all.
So we felt like we won the lottery that day, and it was just a huge gift from the sky. And when they contacted us, Audrey and I were very excited. And so Kay immediately come up with a plan of how we're going to purchase those devices. Dr. Culberson and Keith are responsible for getting those rolled out. So it just really puts us in a position to enhance learning even more than we've done thus far. Dr. Greiner has been working with our teachers, not just our virtual teachers, but all of our teachers around our curriculum and with the technology skills. So I call Tracy Black too. You know, she was the president of the Education Foundation when we embarked upon our one-to-one, and she was really excited about that. Yes, so we have many community members that are excited about our one-to-one being fulfilled. So again, thank you to Toyota. 6.02, we have our policies and regulations, our second read and adoption. And Mr. Schmenke is joining us from Zoom land tonight. Mr. Schmenke, can you hear me?
I can. Good evening. So we have several policies for adoption tonight. These were policies that were rolled out by our policy service in August, and our team has reviewed these. Probably the biggest change for us is the addition of 1301, which was actually adopted by the board in September because that became effective in August. And that is due to new Title IX regulations. The U.S. Department of Ed rolled out some new regulations in May that became effective in August, which required a change for more specific investigation process and process around Title IX complaints, and so that necessitated a new policy, and then also changed 1300, which previously covered any gender-related discrimination or harassment complaints. Most of the other modifications to existing policies were fairly minor. There are a couple new policies. The lead testing in water policy is new, but that is permissive. It just permits us to do some lead testing for our water. And then the anti-Israel boycott prohibition policy is another new one. I'm happy to take any questions from the board as to any of the policies or regulations that we presented this evening.
Motion to adopt. All right, if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to adopt the policy changes as presented. Have a first and second. Randy and Jim. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 6.03.
Thank you, Mr. Schmanke. 6.03, we have a return to learn update, and so myself and Dr. Greiner, and I've also invited Mrs. Mindy Kemper here tonight so we can talk about what return to learn will be as we look to do revisions for the second semester. So, Dr. Greiner, any talking points you'd like to share? I uploaded some things that Mrs. Kemper and I are going to discuss, but anything you'd like to share with the board regarding return to learn?
Good evening, board. So we are working through the next iteration. We are working through the next iteration of the Return to Learn plan. So when our families receive a selection form on October 28th, it'll also include an updated document with some updates and changes from our subcommittees as we have lived our Return to Learn plan here the first 9 weeks. So we're excited to share that with our community, our families on the 28th. They'll have until November 13th to give us their intentions for second semester. And again, along with that Google form, they'll also have an updated version of our Return to Learn.
So one of the things that we're, with the Return to Learn, is that we've done a pre-survey of families in late September, and we shared those results with the board actually we shared it with all of our staff in our return with our R3 review. And so 25% of our virtual learners and their parents, we think that number is around 10% for second semester, but we have several that are still undecided. And also we're trying to get out the date of October 28th to October 13th to give us time for staffing and to plan accordingly with our master schedule if we do have an influx of learners to the in-person, or if we have more additional from in-person to virtual. So we would recommend that the board allow the families the option like we did late July and early August. I received several compliments from parents and community members that they've appreciated that option. And we have great news. Today, this morning, when we got our COVID testing for students, we had 0 students positive in the Lincoln County R3 school district. And so we think that is a huge accomplishment. Our goal has always been to be at 0 and with staff too. So today we have 4 positive tests, but you see those daily numbers. We are continuing to track those. And then we had 155 students in quarantine as of, I think it was at 4 o'clock yesterday. So I think what we're doing is working as far as mitigating the transmission of COVID-19, that our staff is taking the social distance measures, the face coverings with students and staff seem to be working as well. And our parents are helping us too, by not sending kids that are sick to school, and staff are not coming to work sick either. So I think that the board should be very pleased. I know I am. But the first thing I do is when I come to school is I ask Julie, where are the numbers that Mindy has worked on. So one of our options though is antigen testing, and the state, Governor Parson and the state has worked on delivering at least 120,000 antigen tests to school districts, as even high as 2 million. I don't know the final number, but we have until tomorrow to apply. And so there's pros and cons of the antigen testing that many districts are discussing. So I want Mindy to talk about some of what the pros might be and what some of the reasons we might not have antigen testing. And I certainly want Dr. Easterday's perspective on this. I know that we've relied, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Easterday and his expertise in working with Mercy. But Mindy, you want to go ahead and touch on some of the parameters of antigen testing?
Yeah, so the antigen testing, it can be for staff or students, and so it would be a quick way to learn if staff or students were positive. The only problem with students would be getting consent from their parents, but if they're in the office and they're sick, we could get consent from them when they came. A few of the cons, I'm afraid that since it's an antigen test, it's going to show positives but maybe not the negatives that we're looking for. So we're really looking at staff to keep them in school, and these are going to, I'm afraid that we may have, because there's a lot of false negatives. Plus, there is some concern about liability. I know the state has assured us that nurses, it's within their scope of practice, but I think some of my nurses are a little nervous to do that, plus they feel like maybe it's a little bit of us diagnosing, and that we're a little bit far from that without having a physician on staff with us as well. Plus, the state is going to give us PPE, but not N95 masks with them. We're fortunate that we do have N95 masks, but we have not been fitted. All of our nurses haven't been fitted for them, so really, they're, I mean, we're dealing with that. They can wear another mask over the top of it when they're dealing with COVID-like symptoms. But so that was some of the concerns. I know there was a letter from some regional lead nurses and some of their concerns. The only school that I know of in our area right now that's doing it, like St. Louis and St. Charles County, I think is Fort Zumwalt or Francis Howell.
Francis Howell.
Yeah, Francis Howell. So Dr. Easterday, do you, because you and I have talked about it a little bit as well. I don't want to say it's all negative. I think it could be good, but I'm afraid that we might have too much negative, false negatives.
You might be surprised to learn this, not you, Wendy, but the rest of you guys, that there's nothing in medicine that's 100%. So, given a very useful tool to determine to a reasonable extent whether somebody's infected or not, continuing social distancing where they can and wearing masks, I think it's a reasonable step to take. So what that means is, you may still have some kids at school that have COVID. The same thing to a lesser extent is true for a PCR test. PCR tests are not 100%. And so it does create a bit of a controversy, but understanding that there are no 100%, there's no test out there that's 100%. It's a little easier to maybe use that and implement that, particularly to keep our staff and to a great degree our students as well. If the tests are being provided out there, and I think as long as we're taking the other precautions that are also, together, everything together, social distancing, wearing masks, testing where positive, I think it's a reasonable step to take. I think if the district does start to use those tests that are provided, then obviously we need to communicate. This will not catch 100% of people, but we feel that it will catch the largest extent, a significant proportion of those people, and be able to keep them out of the general population. So I would be, I know the state has already sort of sent the same testing opportunities to the nursing homes. I know when I go into a nursing home that it's an antigen test that they're doing, so it's not 100%. So I think it's a reasonable step to take.
So I also talked to our legal counsel as well, just to get their opinion. And of course, there would be some type of liability waiver that these tests, like you said, exactly what you said, Dr. Euston, is what legal counsel's, take on us. I think what I wanted to do was order some for staff, that we could have a fairly quick turnaround time if there were symptoms, and that we would give our staff, but we're also seeing what Mindy was saying with false negatives and false positives. We saw that with a staff member, and so we've tried to work through those situations, like I'm sure other employers have had to do as well. But we've been able to we're really proud that we've been able to mitigate it. But at the same time, I don't want the state to offer something and then someone find out that we had an opportunity and we just say, well, no, we're not going to do that. We do think that there's plenty of access to testing in our area, but in other states, in other parts of Missouri, they don't have the hospitals and the care like what we do. So our friends in Kennett, Missouri, have to drive 45 miles one way to a hospital. They don't have a local hospital because it closed down. So a lot of rural Missouri hospitals are no longer functioning. We're very fortunate, of course, to have Mercy Lincoln and other hospitals within a 45-minute radius.
So is the downside that there would be more false positives, and we would have, is that the downside?
False negatives.
I mean, false negatives. We'd have more false negatives, so that we'd have more kids out that maybe weren't. Like
Well, the other downside is that if we did all students, that sometimes parents, or they might send their children to school sick, knowing that we have tests available, and we are really trying to discourage anybody coming to school sick, staff or students.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I was my thought would be focused around our staff, just to see how that goes. This is something that's really uncharted for us. We don't even do immunizations here at school. We don't do flu shots, so.
Art, on doing the test for the staff, what's the purpose of that? Meaning that if they're symptomatic, we're sending them to go get tested anyway.
Right. It would just be a quick rapid test, Jim. We certainly would try to have those results within 15 minutes, other than waiting longer for those tests. So it would just give us a real quick indicator. But of course, the staff would probably want to go see their
So I guess that's my question. If they are
Yep.
negative, then
Yep.
hey, go back to teaching, or then
That's
what?
something that we'd have to really work out, and that's where
That's one of the other,
Yeah.
things that I see potentially, that if they're not feeling well, we're probably gonna, if they have a
Right.
fever, definitely we're gonna send them home. So,
And what's the criteria for the testing? Do they have to have a fever, or
they have to have a
just
symptom.
symptoms.
just one symptom?
Again, that would have to be worked through. I think somebody with mild symptoms, somebody that comes in and says, I got a runny nose and a cough, I'm pretty sure it's my allergies, that's a great place to use one. You do the test, oh, you're positive, you go home.
That's right.
If somebody had more severe symptoms, you would probably steer them towards their healthcare provider.
Yep.
If they said, hey, obviously I'm having shortness of breath and a fever, I think any fever, that's probably not the time to do that, because if they got a negative test here, then you would be looking for confirmation anyway. So, and we know that milder symptoms gives a milder course and probably less opportunity for spread. So, it is reasonable to sort of to parse those people out that have milder symptoms. They don't have the respiratory complaints or the fevers.
So we said that. So you had said that there is some of the risk is a higher degree of false negatives. Is there any chance of a false? Not 100%. Is there a higher degree of false positives with this type of testing versus other testing, or is it like?
It's fairly low.
Yeah,
It is. Okay.
The false positive rate would be very low.
Okay.
I think the other advantage, it would immediately allow us to begin our contact tracing as well. And I think that has really helped us keep down our number of quarantining. Mindy's assistance, Dr. Werkmeister's helped with that. Fran Jost has been a great addition to our health coordinating office. So and our principals have done a phenomenal job with their universal seating charts, and they've been able to provide a list to Mindy. This child was in this class or around this adult or that type of thing. So I think we've done a really good job with contact tracing as well. So I think we should move forward. I just want to make sure the board is supportive of that. But at this time, it would be staff only. Would be my recommendation to the board.
Okay, we have a motion to approve continuation of the testing by Del McDonald, a second by Randy Siebert. Any further discussion? We'll take the vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Right.
Any other questions on the return to learn? We have had several requests for parents to go from virtual to in-person at the end of the quarter. Many of those have been denied. Some of those have been approved based on a student's individualized education plan, or if they had a Section 504 plan, those have been done at the building level. I've had to deny some of those requests, and so just to be consistent, Dr. Griner and Dr. Sally and Dr. Porter have helped with those decisions as well. So I want our parents to know we appreciate that advocacy, but at the same time we're trying to balance class sizes, building ratios, and the social distancing, and of course our mask pre-K through 12 we think is really helping us once again mitigate the transmission. So I just wanted anything else on the return to learn. We'll bring you more information on November 17th.
So we expect the virtual to be less second quarter?
Well, just on our early results, we think so. Yeah.
Is there a number, a percentage that, I'll throw out something random, let's say it's 5% virtual. Is there a number that we go, hey, listen, this does not make sense from a district standpoint to have any virtual that, at some level,
Right.
we can't do it for 1% of the
Well-
population? Is there a number that, or I think we thought about that yet, or we said, wait and see where the numbers come in?
we don't have a choice because of the Missouri Course Assessment Program, the MOCAP program, that parents can choose virtual, and then we have to provide for that
Okay.
service. So that may happen anyway, but what we've been able to do is have our own teachers teach the virtual. Has really been very cost effective and economic for the district to have them. So those 28 kindergarten through 5th grade teachers has been really key to our success with virtual learning. So I think that's a good question, Dr. Griner. Anything else you would add to besides MOCAP, that there are other underlying health conditions that parents have chose that for their children for other reasons? You know?
Yeah, I think we'll still continue to see a substantial number of families opt in for virtual. And to Dr. Penny's point, we're obligated by statute to provide that, whether it's our own instructors or we're paying a vendor to provide that instruction. So virtual is here to stay. It's just, the number of families we have to serve and whether or not we're serving them with our own educators or partnering with the vendor.
So that was done in 2018 by the General Assembly. They passed the MOCAP program. Well, now there are 12 vendors that parents have access to for these services. And Launch being one, Missouri Connections Academy is one, the Missouri Virtual Academy, MOVA it's called. But we think with our very qualified, highly qualified kindergarten through 5th grade teachers, and our new virtual academy that just started yesterday with Miss Enos, Rachel Enos as our interim principal, we think that's going to help more than 700 kids in our virtual learning program, kindergarten through 5th grade. So, and we have some very small class sizes that we've not been able to see for a while. 18 is a number that we've not been able to. In Boone Elementary, some of their first grades have 18 to 19 kids, and that's a very optimal class size arrangement. Then we have others that have 24 to 25. So we have just, I'd say 18 to 24 is our class size ratio for kindergarten through 5th grade. But we're working very closely with our families, and our communication will begin October 28th.
Mark, the kids that are being quarantined because of contact, is there any talk about, is 14 days always going to be there, or is that being talked about being lessened?
So from the CDC guidelines, we're not getting anything less than the 14-day quarantine period. So we have really 3 versions of our learning. We have in-person learning, we have what's called distance learning for those kids that are quarantined for 14 days, and then we have virtual learning for those kids that are seated virtual for the whole semester. So every assignment, all those things that those children would get in the in-person, they are expected to do in distance learning as well. We'll be discussing that later on this evening, that we have parents that want to see that number reduced. But right now, with the Lincoln County Health Department and with the CDC, they're not saying that less than 14 is recommended at this time.
How many, are we keeping that stat? I mean,
Cumulative?
Yeah.
We are. We're gonna share those probably, we'll probably share those later this week with the board, probably my weekly update. It's something that I've asked Ms. Kemper to track, so we would know how many staff have been cumulatively quarantined, how many students have been sent home for symptoms, how many students have been sent home for quarantine based on a close contact that was COVID positive.
I will also say how many of those that were quarantined that actually became infected.
It will not say that because we have no way of knowing. We think it's a very small number. I'll let my expert address that one. That's a really good question.
Yeah. So we're not tracking that, because some of them, we may not know that they're positive if they're asymptomatic, unless we're testing them all 14 days while they're quarantined.
Yeah, but isn't the health department making them report that they are not symptomatic?
They ask them, they do an exit interview at that 14 days and ask them, but if you don't have any symptoms. Now in St. Charles County, you have to report twice a day.
Okay, maybe that's one.
But not in Lincoln County.
Really? Interesting.
Is that correct?
County to county
Yeah.
has different interpretations, if you will, and different practices around the CDC guidelines. Good way to say that, Mindy?
Yeah, Dr. Easterday, you didn't have to, you didn't have to do your temperature twice a day in Lincoln County, correct? I mean, I didn't think that was.
I'm not sure they didn't recommend it, but there was no interaction between us and the health department.
In St. Charles County, you actually have to check in.
Twice a day, right?
Yeah, and they'll send an officer to your house if
You
do
don't,
not check
right.
in.
But I've also heard,
If you'd like to meet the
I've also heard though of residents in St. Charles County that didn't have to do that.
Really?
It was just like it was kind of,
bit of a
you know what I mean?
Mhm.
St. Charles County got a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know how they have the staffing to do
You know, how do you have the staff to do that? Even in Lincoln County with 55,000 residents, that'd be a lot for our health department and the police and those types of people to track. So, not that it couldn't be done, I'm just saying it just, but our numbers, when you look at our total county numbers, they're over 1,100 now total. But I think there's active cases, 168 now currently in Lincoln County.
Yeah. I like what Jim said. The concern is we still have we have 0 positive, which is awesome, which is fantastic. We just have a lot of kids that are out of school. What is the risk? And that's, I think, what we're trying to, by the numbers. That's why we ask for the numbers. And I know it's hard to track, but of the cumulative kids, because I've had a couple people approach me with their kids been quarantined twice now.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's sad. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is.
No,
I don't have a good answer, but it's, you got a kid that's quarantined for 4 weeks out of a quarter, and
Yeah, that's 28 days, and we don't like that either.
Correct.
But at the same time, we think that is really helping us be able to, once again, have those numbers. And 155 is a lot, but when you consider we got almost 5,100 in-person learners, it's a very small. But most school districts are seeing though the high number of quarantine with the correlation of very low positive. But once again, with the asymptomatic, it's hard to really track it. That's why we're not being able to track that.
Well, here's what we don't know, and the reason that CDC has not come out and said that wearing a mask is social distancing, because we don't know the answer to the question, how protective is a mask? So, in my opinion, we should be doing our own experiment, and we should be monitoring those people that we send home. And it could be as easy as giving that student or querying the student's parents at any time in the last 2 weeks, did you have symptoms? And it's a yes or no. So we know, again, that that's not 100%. There might be somebody out there that has the virus and is not having symptoms. But if you quantify that through an entire semester of school and your answer is 0, then all of a sudden you have a little bit of opportunity to step out, because the other thing is, and obviously we won't talk about this when the parents are in the room necessarily, but I guess it's on live stream, but the other thing is that I lost my train of thought. So we have to understand that at some point a mask may be protected, and we think that a mask is. Otherwise we've been sitting around wearing them. So how does that factor in? There are other bodies out there with very good credentials like Johns Hopkins that say a mask is protected. And so if we went by their guidelines, you know, but the CDC is the CDC. So, but as this thing continues, and we have data that says every kid that we sent home did not, we don't know if they had COVID, but they sure did develop symptoms, that's meaningful.
Okay, thank you for the dialogue, and thank you for the discussion, and appreciate the support on the antigen testing. 6.04, our central office administrator report out. And I'm going to let Dr. Porter and Dr. Salvo, I'm going to let Dr. Porter start. I'm going to work our way through Zoom. Good evening, Dr. Porter.
Good evening. What an honor to be selected. I'll go first. Okay, so we've been working really hard in the curriculum department. We are getting ready. Before Christmas, we will have our first meeting with all 6 grade levels for our math curriculum revision. So we adopted our new resource last year, and now it's time for us to look at our current curriculum that we are using to see if we need to revise it. And we will need to make some revisions for sure. So we have 6 days set up, 1 for each grade level before Christmas, and then we'll go into the second round in 3rd quarter. We started writing curriculum for the librarians. They haven't really had a curriculum. They don't have standards issued by DESE. So we have been working to get them some curricula so that they can all be on the same page, making sure that every child in R3, no matter what elementary school they go to, will have the same opportunity to learn some of those library skills. And our last year, our music teachers wrote K1-2 curriculum, and this year, this month, they have written grade 3. So they'll be continuing next month to write 4th grade and then finally 5th grade. So the curriculum that they have written is going very well in their classrooms, and they're excited to be using that this year. And lastly, I have resubmitted the final budget for Titles 1, 2, and 4, and are seeking approval on that budget. I'm complete.
Thank you, Dr. Porter. Dr. Salvo, good evening.
Good evening. So things have been busy but going well. We recently did a 504 training for both administrators, for one building representative as well as our school counselors on the 13th, and it went really well. And we will be doing a follow-up 504 training in just a few weeks in November. I've been sending out a twice a month an SEL newsletter to everyone in the district that just provides some self-care tips and stress management, some tools for everybody's tool belt there. I also conducted secondary trauma training on the 15th for our secondary trauma teams, and I'll be doing that same training for elementary at the end of next week. And the focus of that training this month has been on regulation, both for students and for adults. And we've been working on adding resources to the district website for all of our stakeholders. So there's a social emotional tab now under departments, and that includes self-care, stress management. There's a virtual calming room link. So there's a lot of resources for our stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Salvo. Mrs. Schmanke?
Good evening, board. As part of my report tonight, I have included a quarterly HR report. So hopefully you have that to take a look at, which gives you a snapshot of July, August, and September. Comparatively, we have hired more certified staff during this period, but less classified staff. We are still in the process of hiring paras. Currently, we have 7 para openings among some other classified positions that we're still struggling to get fully staffed, with the possibility of more para openings at semester. We have some students returning. So I think that the decreased number of hiring and classified staff is just our struggle to get fully staffed. Separations, there were a few more certified separations during this period than last year, but our classified separations have been pretty consistent from last year. The unemployment claims continue to be higher over this quarter than last year at this time, but we are starting to see these trickle off. So hopefully we are on the downward trend with these claims. And then you'll note in the leaves section, the big difference here is the FFCRA requests, which is, I believe, 80, I can't see it right now, but 84 leave requests. So those are not total number of days. The total number of days for our employees this year for FFCRA, which is new leave this year, is well over 300 leave days. So that is a big difference for us. Any questions about the quarterly report?
No. Thank you very much.
Okay, I had a few other things.
You keep
Just wanted to
going.
check in.
You keep going.
Okay, so some reports. We did meet with ESS again last week virtually on the status of our sub hirings, and we do have an upward trend in the number of active subs right now. I think we're up to about 70 active subs, so that's more than we started the year with. However, still about half of what we would have on a normal year. Our fill rate for the last 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago it was 62%, and last week it was 61%. So definitely our fill rate is not where we would want it to be. We continue to try and increase the number of active subs. We are offering opportunities to our employees who have daytime availability hours. We have reimbursed employees to get their sub-cert. We're offering referral fees just to try and continue to grow our sub pool. So we're hoping that we continue to see that sub pool move in the right direction and those fill rates increase. We did successfully have a flu shot and biometric screening event this month, and so we were able to provide over 150 flu shots to our employees free of charge and about 200 biometric screenings. So we felt like that was a great opportunity for our employees just to make sure that they're keeping their own wellness front and center. We also had our UNUM, which is our voluntary benefits service. We did open enrollment with our employees so that our employees had the opportunity to check in with our representatives, get additional information about our voluntary benefit offerings. And then lastly, we're working on revising our onboarding process. We know this year in particular with the rush to get employees in the buildings because we were not able to start the year fully staffed. We've had some miscommunications, and we've at times started employees without all the information, training, or access they needed. And so we're trying to improve that process to make sure that it's a good onboarding experience for all employees. And I am complete.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sally. You there, Mary?
I am lost connection.
No problem.
Good evening, board. I have been spending time working on assessment dates for fall EOE. That's around the corner. We'll open those up December 1st, and I'm working with our STCs to get them trained so that we are prepared to reach the needs of these students. 7th grade science teachers, I spent the day with them yesterday as they unpack standards so we can write curriculum. And finally, this past Saturday, I worked with Dr. Laffey from University of Missouri, working with teachers across the state that are in her course on relations.
You there, Dr. Sally? Okay, thank you, Dr. Sally, for that great report, and if you have more things, we can always come back. Ms. Sabatini, welcome.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for joining us at the new transportation facility. That was exciting. I appreciate everyone coming out and seeing it. We're very excited to move in. Very excited. Let me just say very excited. So what we've been up to, staffing update. We do have our new mechanic on board, Austin Mashmeyer. We've got 2 new drivers in training at the moment, Doug Collins and Jessica Nix. And we are actually onboarding a new returning driver, Stacy Brees. So we're staffing up. We feel pretty good. We're doing well on that. On October 6th, we held our second in-service meeting for safety materials to review with our drivers and our monitors. We had to pivot a little bit, and we actually had our meeting outdoors, which was great. I have to say thank you very much to Janine Skeers and Aaron Flanagan for helping us set that up at last minute. It went really well, and we enjoyed the weather. We also we've been working on our reviewing safety procedures with the students on our bus. Twice a year we take time to do that. We talk about potential hazards and what students do in case of emergency on the bus. I'm happy to report that we completed our training in bus evacuations early this year. I was very impressed that everyone got theirs done right away. Very fortunate to have a good staff like that. This week starts National School Bus Safety Week. Being conscious of social distancing and limiting our exposure in the buildings, we decided to do a virtual presentation for this year's experience. Our safety trainers, Renee French, Dina Maynor, and Caitlin Prinster, along with a handful of our dedicated drivers, produced and starred in their own video, teaching our elementary students how to ride the bus safely and how to do an evacuation. They had a great time, and it actually turned out really well. We hope to have that posted on our website very soon. Miss Audrey Henry was very instrumental in creating the video and editing, and it turned out beautifully, so we appreciate all of her help on that. Lastly, we're making some updates to our transportation employee handbook. We hope to have those revisions ready for review next month. And I am complete.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabatini. Dr. Connor, good evening.
Good evening. It's definitely a busy time for student services. Usually in first quarter, we're finishing up our transfers, and we're also getting a lot of initial referrals, and especially this year with the amount of time some students spent at home with parents. I think some of them are really questioning whether or not they need services or not, so we're working through all that. We had a couple huge reports we submitted to DESE. We work with business office very closely on. The first one is the High Need Fund, and that's a fund that reimburses the district 3 times the ADA for the normal student. And so that report came back at $844,000. That's down a little bit from last year, but that's to be expected due to some of the expenses we didn't normally have due to being on COVID. And then we also submitted a public placement fund, and this is a fund that reimburses districts for excessive costs when the state places students within the district, and that one came back about $85,000. So a lot of paperwork on those 2 things, but that reimbursement goes a long ways. I just wanted to share out latchkey numbers. Last year, about this time, we had about 490 total students. 156 of those were staff. This year, we're down just about 90 to about 400. And that includes 147 staff. So that continues to be a great benefit for our staff. And then finally, with COVID upon us, we have a small handful of students that require some assistive technology with communication. And typically in the past, those kids have individual iPads with different apps on them, like Proloquo, that they use for communication. Well, one of the issues we ran into instructing kids at home and even virtually is that the need to basically go between one device for communication and then the other one to interact with the teachers. There was starting to be a growing need that some of these students would need 2 iPads, and it just wasn't working very well. So our SLP at Quiver Park, Alicia Rumpel, she secured $20,000 in grant money from Missouri Assistive Technology, and we are funding 5, they're called NovaChat communication devices. So we're really excited that these devices, the kids will be able to interact beyond the entire time, and then they can still interact with their iPad and get their instruction from the teacher. So we feel like it's a win-win. It's going to be more beneficial for our students. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Connor. Appreciate that very much. I want to thank our central administrative team joining us on Zoom. And next we're going to go on to Mrs. Hennebrey and work our way to Dr. Culberson.
Good evening. You'll see my report is attached for my monthly numbers from the communications office. Nothing incredibly notable there. We did have a little bit of drop in some of our numbers and in the social media land. That's okay. That's pretty normal about this time of year. Other things that are going on right now, in the month of October, we annually have a R3 Cares giving campaign. It's a financial campaign where we invite our employees to donate either through payroll deduction or just some sort of donation as they see fit to the United Way, the Buddy Bags program, Bright Futures, and Lincoln County R3 Education Foundation. It's just an opportunity for them to give back in a financial way if they choose to do so. Also, as Dr. Greiner and Dr. Penny noted, we are working on the final selection form and the communication that will go out to our families next week regarding any updates or tweaks that may be to the Return to Learn plan, and then allowing them to make their choice for the second semester. Also working with Mike Langley to wrap the food truck. I think you had the opportunity to see that as you came in, so we're excited to see some color on that. And then later next month, there are 2 students that designed that logo. Later next month, we'll be inviting them in to get to see that and see their artwork up on a pretty big platform, so that'll be really exciting for them as well. Our email vendor that we use for our newsletters was bought out, and so we have switched over to that, and we'll be training our EOPs on that platform so they know how to utilize that for our family newsletters. As Ms. Sabatino noted, we did do the School Bus Safety Week video, and that will be rolling out on our district platforms as well this week, and then through all of the elementary schools. And our trainers did a really fantastic job in making sure that that was engaging and informative for our students. I've been working with Dr. Salvo on our crisis response and formalizing that process. We unfortunately had a situation where we had to mobilize our crisis response team, and so just getting on paper what that looks like so it becomes a little bit more habit for those that are involved in those types of unfortunate situations. And then lastly, working on a video about progress as promised, so surrounding the activities that have taken place and the projects that have taken place because of the April 2019 Prop Kids No Tax Increase bond issue. There's a company that is a partner with CTS, one of our vendors, that is helping us to make a video for our community so that they can see all the wonderful things that are happening around the district thanks to them.
Thank you. Mrs. Richardson.
Just an update on our audit. In November, instead of the auditors coming, we will have a draft version that you will have the month to review. The CARES Act funding is causing some issues with audits, as the guidelines for how to audit that and exactly how much it has to be audited isn't out yet. It's supposed to be out the first part of November, so then they'll come in December and present the final audit for us. On CARES Act, we'll submit the final application for the Lincoln County funds in November. It's looking like it'll be about $570,000 this time. And then there was the new allocation that you've probably heard about, the $61 million that the governor released. And our allocation of that is about $411,000. There's not real specific guidelines yet, so we're looking into that to see how we can utilize those funds. And then the basic formula payment for October, the SAT is up to 88%. So it's continuing to increase each month, which is a good sign.
Keep the karaoke machine go with us, Mike? I'll request the final countdown from Europe for next month when we're talking about the return to learn selection. What do you think, Roger?
Perfect.
Good evening, board. Some exciting things to share with you about what's upcoming in R3 in academics. First of all, I want to shout out our principals, as you guys read from our building reports tonight. Lots to celebrate around first quarter with our school improvement plans. Our buildings are working very hard, principals, teachers, support staff, to not only deliver really high quality instruction, but also to intervene and help students that have gaps. So a lot of the effort around, our new effort this year is around providing interventions, academic interventions for our students. And we know that through COVID during fourth quarter and even into this school year, we have kids' academic gaps widening. So it's imperative that we have a plan to address that, and I'm really encouraged by our principals, our teachers, all of our staff of the excellent work that they're doing. So I just want to shout them out. We are excited to continue our partnership with Rankin. As you all know, the facility is underway, and we are also talking with Rankin about programming for next year. And we know that the facility may not be ready for the start of the school year in August, so we may have to have some alternative plans, including a potential partnership with our own ag science department. So we are actually meeting this week with representatives from Rankin and Mizzou on our campus to talk about a partnership opportunity for next August at Buchanan High School. So more to come on that, but we're excited to have a chance to partner with both Rankin as well as Mizzou. Conversations continue to progress around career academies. We will have several staff members, including members of the academic department, participating in a virtual conference next week. Last year, Dr. Penny and myself, along with a couple of other district staff, had a chance to go to Nashville and see career academies in action. Mr. Brown went with us. Julie Rogers from Economic Development went with us. Mrs. Hennebury went with us as well. So that was a fun trip. No Nashville trip this year. They're going to do it virtually. And so we have several members of our high school teaching staff and leadership that are going to participate in that virtual conference. I think that'll really help a lot of our staff really understand what career academies look like. So we're looking forward to that. Also continuing to plan for our freshman academy launch next year. So working closely with the staff at the 9th grade center as well as Ryan Myers, who is our academy coach. You might know Ryan as a teacher at Buchanan. He's also assisting us with getting our career academies off the ground at the 9th grade center. We are working on summer school for 2021, believe it or not. So when we come back in November, we'll likely be sharing our summer school sites for 2021, and we're beginning the process of developing programming with Catapult, our partner there. So more to come on summer school, but we are already thinking about summer school here in person and probably some virtual programming as well for our district, for R3 for next summer. And then finally, just want to echo our welcome to Rachel Enos into a new position as the interim elementary virtual academy principal. Mrs. Enos has done a great job in the transition, has worked very hard balancing 2 jobs over the course of the last few weeks, but she is moving into that role full time. And I also, again, want to recognize Dr. Porter for all of her work to guide elementary virtual education through first quarter. And Amy's done a wonderful job and is doing a lot of, having a lot of good conversations with Rachel as she transitions into that role. So, thank you.
The Troy Rankin workforce development bid documents were reviewed expeditiously by the federal group of EDA, and we received those back. The ball's in our court, and the bid has been advertised, and the Lincoln County Journal will come out this week. Troy Free Press, standard periodic or standard procedure for school district to advertise in those forums. It'll also be placed on the Drexel Plan Room site. It has a site where contractors can pick up that information. And thanks in large part to our Gordon Schweitzer from CTS, and he's made this a very Easy, well, not easy, but more streamlined process for us. There's been a lot of planning, but happy to get to this point. The bid opening will be November 6th in the boardroom upstairs, November 6th at 10 a.m. And we do expect large participation from local and not so local contractors. I think Rankin may have some leads on contractors in their area that might come out too. The site is finished. The site work has been complete. Cannon and Cochran and I will do a final walkthrough next week, develop a punch list for any remaining items. That's a really big step going into a building project now that the site's complete. It's all building from this point forward. So we hope that in itself, that situation moves this project along so we can more closely time the completion in August and hopefully not run over. You can see some work being accomplished at Main Street Elementary. The masons are busy putting up the safe room walls. You know, that as far as the timeline goes, I won't mention any great detail there, but all along the plan is to move in January. But more to come on that front. We'll see. There's been some delays. Now they're moving. I hope everyone's happy to have their Friday night lights back. I sure am. It's come with a few complications, including lots and lots of bedrock underneath that field. But the lights are on, and you may have got a glimpse of some of the features, color features. That's just a small portion of what those lights are capable of. And Guy Grimstead and representatives at Sports Beams are working to make those lights perform like they are capable of, and they are capable of theatrics, much like our PAC inside our PAC. So you will see halftime shows that have lots of color in the future. Technology-wise, we have successfully deployed all of the 4th grade iPads, and now that voting has contributed, we now have another set of 600 in stock, and they're being processed right now for K3. So with some planning, we'll get those out to buildings within the next month. We're also planning for an installation of Apple TVs in the elementary schools at this point. So
Good.
that's it.
Thank you. That's all we have for right now.
All right. Very good. Thank you all for your reports. At this point, I would seek a motion to go into closed session. Randy and Sarah, all in favor, aye? Aye. Okay, brief recess and reconvene in closed.
You didn't hear that, Dr. Thompson?
I really didn't hear it.
That's why I keep the mask on. You can't read my lips.
I cannot, that's right.
We're practicing the pre-debate microphone hot and cold.
I don't know if I'm Joe Biden or if that's Donald Trump. We haven't decided what role we're going to have in the pre-debate.
I'll pull a couple
Hey, Rachel.
Should I pull a couple chairs?
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Sorry for the delay. I apologize. We have
That's all right.
some seating. Come right up.
Oh, sure.
Yep. Thank you so much for being here.
She's gonna leave.
We do have buzzers for the seats too.
So we do have Dr. Mary Sue Thompson, our Vice President of the Board, is on Zoom, so she can hear what you say, especially when you're talking to the microphone. Dr. Thompson can hear. And then we also have Sarah Schmanke, our Director of Human Resources, on Zoom as well. So, Rachel, I want you to introduce yourselves to the board, and then I'll explain how to set up our meeting, and then allow Mrs. Duder and Mrs. Winchester to address the board. Go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. I am Rachel Dooner. I have 4 children within the district, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade. They are all doing in-person learning. I am actively involved in Lincoln County and lots of different baseball, softball, PTO, all kinds of different things. That's me in a nutshell.
Hi, I'm Sherry Winchester. My daughter Grace is a 7th grader here at Troy Middle School, and she's actively recruiting my son to come over from Sacred Heart. So we'll see where that leads us. But my paid position is I'm the executive director with the Lincoln County Resource Board. We fund mental health programs through a 4% sales tax, and we serve kids 0 to the age of 19 with prevention, early intervention, and crisis intervention services in their schools, homes, and communities.
So late last week, the student contacted my office regarding our quarantining of students and what Butler County Health Department was doing and what the Poplar Bluff School District was doing regarding a four-day quarantine, to your question, Jim, and then students that if they tested negative, they could come back on the 5th day instead of having to be out the whole 14 days. So she asked to come before the board. I told her that would be great. We'd see her tonight, and then I also asked Ms. Dooner that Ms. Winchester just have 2, just so we could really do the social distancing, and they agreed to comply. So go ahead and with your statements, and then we'll go forward. Just really, do you have handouts as well?
I have the Butler
That'd
one
be
if
wonderful.
anybody wants to read it.
Yep, that'd be great. Please pass that around. And this is an opportunity for you to address the board, Rachel, and then any questions the board may have or you may have as well. So
Okay.
really looking forward to a really strong dialogue. Actually, I'll get you a copy of this letter and I'll forward it to you. It's from the Butler County Health Department regarding their quarantining and contact tracing near Poplar Bluff, Missouri. I haven't had a chance to see that letter, but I'll send it to you after this meeting.
I think it was in the board packet.
Yeah, okay, good. You have seen a copy of the letter. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so like I said, I am a mother of 4 children. They're all doing in-person learning, and one has been recently affected by positive exposure. I didn't really quite understand how it affected the families or the child until it occurred in my own home, and that's why I'm here. First, I would like to say thank you for everything you all have done and continue to do to keep our children in school. I know this is uncharted waters, and you all are steering the ship to the best of your ability. We appreciate your willingness to listen and have a conversation to see if there are other options for the 14-day quarantine our children are being put on. My assumption is that most of you know how the 14-day quarantine works, but in case you don't, currently if a student is positively exposed to someone who tests positive for COVID-19, the student, regardless of healthy or not, are sent home to quarantine. The credit for the 14-day quarantine for positive exposure starts on the day following the last exposure, but sometimes it's not found out until 4 or 5 days later. For example, my daughter was positively exposed on a Monday. We weren't notified until Friday. Monday was her day 0. Tuesday started her day 1. and she was given credit for 4 of those days being in school, all the while positively exposing everyone in school had she been positive. And then as they are called in, they are all put in one room together to then be sent home. Never in history have we kept healthy children home on the chance they might be sick. Instructions from our health department are, do not let your child leave the house for 14 days, all while everyone else in the home is free to come and go as they please. I think most of us could agree that if the goal is mitigating risk, there are gaps in this approach. Again, when these policies were devised, we know the intention was good, provide an in-person learning option because that is what is deemed optimal for our kids, while working to keep our kids and staff healthy. But we know more today, and thanks to our board and the incredible staff at R3, our families and students have educational access and choice, and appropriate levels of risk with regard to COVID. The Poplar Bluff School District has recently reached negotiations with their health department to keep kids in school until symptoms are present. Students and families are notified of the close contact and kept in school with activities and only sent home when and if symptoms present. I provided the press release from the school district and health department. I and many other R3 parents wish to voice our support of such a policy change by coming before you this evening, as we believe this plan the school district has implemented is one of logic and beneficial for everyone. We also find that this approach validates current policies of mask wearing and social distancing implemented to mitigate risk as COVID cases are inevitable. The plan validates such proactive and protective measures. Poplar Bluff has a student body of around 5,000. That was as of 2018. It's slightly more now. I didn't get an accurate figure.
It's about 6,200.
Okay, thank you. And ours is 6,800 with 5,500 enrolled in in-person learning. Their class sizes range the same as ours do, 25 to 30. And while in contact with the Linn County Health Department, I asked for local statistics on individuals who are exposed and then test positive for COVID. I was told they don't have those, and it is nearly impossible to track. I then asked for data just related to our school district, because they have a record for every child who is sent home because of close contact. The answer was we don't have any statistics because we can't track that. This makes me question even more the policy of quarantine for healthy children, because upon release back to school, you must do a two-question exit interview with the health department. It seems reasonable that such tracking would be within reach, as they have knowledge of how many students are approved to return to school and who may exhibiting symptoms and undergoing tests. And as I exited yesterday, part of the exit process is 2 questions. 1, is your child healthy? 2, is your family healthy? And you answer yes, and they email you your paper that is 2 sentences, and then you submit it to your school and you're on your merry way. And now Sherry will talk about her side.
Thank you so much for allowing us to be here with you this evening. And from the bottom of my heart, and as Rachel said, we're just so thankful to your leadership. I know it was a very brave and bold decision to allow us to have in-person as an option, and I just thank you. I know that's what was best for my child and our family, and I just appreciated the families having choice. And I shared with Rachel, our daughters were on the same softball team, and I said it really struck me how bad our kids were yearning to be back to school when it felt like it was 150 degrees and they were outside playing softball with their mask on, not complaining, just wanting to be here and being a part of it. So thank you so much. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't want to be here tonight. I told Rachel that I just felt with my position at the resource board, I was probably getting myself into some murky waters that I'd prefer to stay out of. And I also made a personal commitment to myself not to say anything publicly about COVID, as it's no longer a public health issue, but a political issue. But I'm a parent first, and because of my role at the resource board, I have access to data and information. Most days I wish I didn't. And I just felt that it was appropriate to share what I see. Everything we do is public, but everyone's busy and doesn't have time to seek out all the information. So I just wanted to share so that we can make decisions that factor in our full community and student body. So I'll start with, we just completed our needs assessment, and the full report is on our website. It's lincolncountykids.org. And the most recent data that we can access is 2018. So if you have trouble sleeping and want to look at all the data and graphs, I welcome you to do that. But then I will preface it by saying that this is all pre-COVID statistics. So as of 2018, 30.3% of Lincoln County kids live in single-parent households. As we know, most single-parent households, you have to work. So when kids go in for quarantine, the lack of supervision and ability to have an adult there to help with the schooling is of concern. 15.3% of Lincoln County kids live in poverty. And for a family of 4, you're looking at a gross annual income of $25,750. That's a family of 4. Lincoln County has the highest rate of substantiated child abuse cases. 6.3 cases for every 1,000 children, which is higher than Missouri's substantiated child abuse rate of 3.7 and higher than the substantiated cases of Franklin, Montgomery, St. Charles, St. Louis, and Warren counties. In May, the Lincoln County Resource Board surveyed our funded mental health specialists. Again, we serve children ages 0 to 19 with mental health services ranging from prevention and early intervention to crisis intervention. We wanted to learn of the local impact on our children here in Lincoln County on their mental and behavioral health, as mental health is a part of public health and must be considered when making public health policies. All of our funded agencies reported serious concerns and disturbing cases involving Lincoln County children since the spring and the stay-at-home mandates. And I just wanted to share just a sampling. From the Crisis Nursery Wentzville, which we fund for respite care for Lincoln County kids, they reported under-resourced families are struggling to adapt to the rapidly changing environment and are impacted by the stress of losing income, securing basic necessities, fears over the virus, and having children home all day, often in overcrowded conditions. Now more than ever, child abuse and neglect prevention services are critical for keeping our kids safe. Risk factors for child abuse such as social isolation, lack of supports, poverty, and high stress levels have increased significantly for many families almost overnight. With schools closed and children sheltering in place at home, at-risk children are even more vulnerable without normal community supports in place. Alarmingly, child increased by 50%, that was as of the spring, and concerns of increased family violence were only growing. Compass Health Network reported the lack of school routine, schedule, and on-site school-based supports and nutrition services provided by the school create heightened stress in the home environment that was already stressed by the pandemic. And I'll mention that Compass, we fund them for school-based mental health specialists in partnership with family. So these are more of our critical intervention services that they're reporting. And last, the Child Center. In terms of mental health of our clients, the agency has seen some of the most severe cases of abuse we have ever handled, including a little boy who was so severely abused, he dressed in as many layers of clothing as he could find to keep warm before spending the night in the woods because he knew he could get help the next morning. A middle school student so desperate for help, she emailed her entire school detailing her abuse. A 12-year-old who was actually referred for a forensic interview, which means child abuse allegations have been made, but didn't end up visiting the Child Center for several weeks because his family wasn't cooperating and the report wasn't considered urgent. However, when he did talk about what happened to him, he detailed 3 additional incidents of abuse and explained that there was no way to ask for help during online classes because his abuser was closely monitoring him. When kids and families who elected for in-person learning are forced to quarantine for 2 weeks, despite the individual's health status and the mitigation efforts the district has embraced, including mask wearing, this can be traumatic for our kids. It's obviously stressful for families, but for children at risk for abuse and who suffer from lack of resources such as food or heat as we're going into the cold months, it can be life-altering and endangering. Asking families to adhere to quarantine and virtual learning for 14 days, it can work. In my family, and I'm here tonight to say, if that happened to my kid, we'd make it work. Would it be stressful? Yes. But I could work from home. I could make sure my daughter had whatever resources she had available and she's in a safe environment. So I'm not here for myself today. But I do have to say that this policy reflects a middle to upper middle class lens, and as we take a more realistic view of our demographic and our fragile family population, such a policy can inflict more harm than good for the child's physical and mental health. Thank you so much for allowing for a thoughtful and respectful discussion. We don't envy the decisions you have to make, and again, are sincerely grateful for your commitment to our children's education and safety. There has been, and you may have heard in the news, a declaration, the Great Barrington Declaration, and like with everything involving COVID, it too has become political. But I did want to share the thoughts and the feedback because it does and has been drafted by infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists. And they came forward with this declaration because of their, quote, grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health effects of the prevailing COVID-19 policies. And they're recommending an approach called focused protection. And it states in part, current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. The results, to name a few, include lower childhood vaccination rates, worsening cardiovascular disease outcomes, fewer cancer screenings, and deteriorating mental health, leading to greater excess mortality in years to come, with the working class and younger members of society carrying the heaviest burden. Keeping students out of school is a grave injustice. Adopting measures to protect the vulnerable should be the central aim of public health responses to COVID-19. Schools and universities should be open for in-person teaching. Signed, Dr. Martin Poldorf, Professor of Medicine at Harvard University, Dr. Sunetra Gupta, Professor at Oxford University, and Dr. J. Bhattacharya, Professor of Stanford University Medical School. Thank you.
Any questions for Mrs. Dennard or Mrs. Winchester from the board?
How large a group do you guys represent? Do you think?
Probably the vast majority of, I posted I shared the Butler County thing on my Facebook page, and I shared the Butler County news release just as a share. It wasn't any amount of, it was just knowledge. And there were numerous comments on there. There were lots of shares, and there were people who flooded my inbox with, let's go, let's do this, and that's not what we're doing. We want a healthy discussion, we want to see if it's an option. Because there are people that, I think until you're affected by it, you don't realize what it is. Because I did not. I was naive to it, I didn't realize what it meant until I had to pick my kid up and take her home and say, sorry, your healthy body is sitting in your bed, in your room, while 5 other people leave, 3 other children go to all the schools in the district, and you're sitting here until your 14 days are up.
Mark, I have a question for you. When the student is quarantined, and because I know that the principals and the teachers probably know if that's an at-risk kid at home, is there anything the district is doing to check up or follow up with that student?
Well, certainly they're in our distance learning program, so they have contact with our teachers, because our in-person learning teachers are also responsible for that distance learning child as well. So we do also have virtual counseling available as well for those students. We've done home visits too, Jim. I don't know how many home visits we've done in the first quarter, but we certainly, we were just talking about that today with our principal. So it isn't like they just go here and then we don't see, we don't see them for 14 days, but we still want to have contact with them, because ultimately they're gonna come back. Like Rachel's child will come back after that time and then be assimilated back into the in-person learning. So the ones that Dale had talked about, we do have a few students. I don't know how many. I don't know if it's more than 6 or 7 that have actually been quarantined twice. To my knowledge, we've not had anybody quarantined a 3rd time, but it's ultimately it could happen because who you've been around and if it's somebody's positive. But we don't want those students just to go for 14 days and we not have any contact with them at all.
I guess my question is more specific.
Yeah.
We know Rachel's kids are going to be, not at risk, but the kids that
Yeah.
Chester's talking about, there is a good
Yeah,
indication that.
well, and we have some virtual learners that we don't have the close contact with that we would like to have, because some of those kids we've not seen since March. So we're still trying to get the parents, and we're working very closely with the juvenile office to address that area of truancy, education neglect, because that learning gap is going to be great. So that's one thing we've been able to do first quarter. Dr. Greiner, we've been able to do assessments to see where kids are. If there has been a learning gap, then what are we going to do as a district to bring those students forward? Anything else you'd want to say to Mr. Ladley's question? I think that's a good question.
Yeah, the child's teachers will continue to remain in daily contact with the students through Canvas, Zoom, Google Meet, and if there was a lapse in contact, then they would be in contact with the building leadership, and obviously reaching out to parents. That could include a home visit if it's been a few days, if we haven't heard from a child or their family. So we do have measures in place to follow with families we're not hearing from.
Yeah, or even, providing hotspots for, internet connectivity, or in a device. We've got the devices to share with our families. So, I think what I called the superintendent of Poplar Bluff, just to say, well, how's this working? And he and I we're colleagues, and what surprised me was that they didn't have a pre-K-12 student mask mandate. It was just kind of recommended. Which you gather that in number 2, where it says if a contact is not wearing PPE. Well, all of our students are wearing, PPE, and we've and our staff is as well. So, one thing that he shared with me was that they were inundated with contact tracing as a district, and they felt like the health department, they wanted them to help with that. And if they didn't do this, then they were going to ask the health department to do all their contact tracing. Whereas we've taken it upon ourselves to do that, and hopefully you'll limit the number. So we do have good news. We have 0 students today that were positive COVID, so we really feel good about that. And our numbers are going down from, I think it was like 240 then to 199, and now we're at 155. So we're seeing that decline, but we don't want any kids to miss school. So to your point, Rachel, I wish there was some happy medium type thing. But the question did come up tonight because we did our return to learn update as we get ready for second semester that Mr. Ladley had asked. And I said, well, we're ready to talk about that when Ms. Dooner and Ms. Winchester get here. We've also been in contact weekly with the Lincoln County Health Department, and I'm not sure they're going to support something like this, but at the same time, it doesn't hurt to just say this is what our board heard, and and those types of things. I can't promise you that that's going to change, but I can promise you we will vet it, we will discuss it. I can't speak for the board. Only the board could do that. But to Mr. McDonald's questions, it is something that they are hearing as well. But we also have people that don't want to wear these either. And so we know that these are actually really helping us with our mitigation of the transmission. So
I'll just interject one of the moves that we made up front proactively. After our first week of school, we had what we felt like was an inordinate amount of contact tracing cases due to the minimal amount of positive COVID tests. We had a special board meeting, just so you know, you may not know this. At a special board meeting, we authorized the school district to hire our own internal contact tracing person. Dr. Bergmeister, who had just retired, is our person to help with our nursing staff in that situation, and I know our communication staff was involved early on. We were inundated, but I believe that's mitigated some of our exposure cases because they're driving deeper into the conversations of who were you exposed to for what amount of time, how long were you there. So I don't know that if Mindy or someone else can add to what we feel like the benefit to that has been. I hope it's great because we're paying for somebody to do it internally instead of allowing the health department just to say the entire soccer team go home, for instance, or we had an entire school closed, as you well know, for 2 weeks, our early childhood center, and since we've taken that over, our numbers have continued to go down. I don't know if you might know that.
And I think another interesting thing you have to think about is one positive, we only go like if they're 2.5 feet apart, that's just one that we had, that's as far apart as they could get the desk, was 2.5 feet. So we had to take 2 people in front of, 2 people to the side, but then there's also a bus and a transfer bus. So there's like, you know, if they have 6 or 8 classes, and even if that's 5 people around them, that's 30 people right there. So, I mean, I think that's a lot less than taking out a whole, you know, 6 classes of 25 people. So.
Yeah, our goal at the very beginning, we're on your team. Our goal is to keep every single kid in our district in class, even opposed to virtual. Quite honestly, the board's on record. We're better face to face with our students than we are over a device. Period. If we weren't, we shouldn't be in the profession we're in. Quite honestly. So our goal, our number one goal, is to keep kids in class because that's where they learn better. That's where we can determine some of the issues that you know, Sherry, you've talked about, obviously, and try to mitigate some of those issues that are going on in the homes. You know, we're wide open, but again, as you have already admitted, none of us are trained for this.
Right.
We're learning, and we're trying to do our best to balance what the health department's saying we have to do, what the medical profession is saying what we have to do, educationally and socially and mentally what we think needs to happen. And quite honestly, nobody's got 100% right. Matter of fact, Butler County doesn't have it right, quite honestly, because we did some numbers there. And what are the numbers, Mark?
Well, they're into the 400s now. But they've actually, since I started kind of looking at you and I talked, they were at like 350 quarantine, and now they're into the 450. So they've seen a 100 increase, and then they are tracking students and staff, and we are too. But they have one number, so they had 47 positives COVID today, whereas we had 4. And so when you figure, and they're about 90% virtual, or 90% in person of that 6,200, and about 10% virtual, whereas we're 75 and 25%. So I would gladly put our data against Poplar Bluff, but at the same time, I think it's also because our community and our parents have understood the need for face coverings and the social distance, and respected the really at volleyball games and at football games, and we've only missed, to my knowledge, 1 soccer tournament all fall season, and our band's been able to perform at halftime. Our show choir actually had a Sunday musical performance where the kids wore face coverings. So we're really excited that we can continue those extracurricular activities that we know the kids and families really enjoy. So I think that, but I do know our friends in St. Charles County are having the same discussion, especially in Fort Zumwalt and Francis Howe, where Fort Zumwalt was up to about 600 students at one time in quarantine. Well, they got almost 20,000 kids, and Francis Howe as well. So I think the region is looking for a solution. You know what I'm saying? Because my colleagues in those districts are having the same conversation. So I'm very fortunate to have caring parents that are advocates for their children, and that a board that also, most of our board members have children in the school district as well, which is wonderful, and I do too. So I think that your point is something that, and I think there's, Rachel, you probably have done research on this too. I think there's this county and 3 others, to my knowledge, out of the 114 that are doing this. Is that right? Yes. Yeah. But I don't know what other counties there are. I heard Callaway County, so I'm going to check with my.
Almost towards Kansas, but I don't remember.
Kansas, okay. Well, Callaway is towards.
Still in Missouri.
Yeah. Callaway. I've heard that Callaway is looking at this. That's near Fulton and South Callaway, North Callaway. But then I don't know the other.
What's Desi say about this?
Well, Desi's immediate, their guidelines and reopening plans would not support this because Desi, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, is very in tune with the CDC Center for Disease Control guidelines, which call for the 14-day quarantine. That's where we got the policy, was from the CDC to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Desi also did not mandate masks, but recommended it as well. Therefore, we felt like that was a strong recommendation. That's why we put that into our return to learn plan. So
part of the challenge too is all health departments are all over the place with this.
Yeah.
And so I did ask the health department when I called them. I had asked them about Butler County, and they said, do we need to appeal to you? What do we need to do? And they said, that the health department is just a guidance, that y'all are actually the ones that steer the ship.
Right.
So, they weren't super helpful in a lot of things. As far as that,
On record.
so,
Pretty common.
there's that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it was,
Yeah.
I mean, I was,
Yeah. Well, I think to your point, Rachel, is the balance of it isn't really there because you had 3 other kids there exposed and they're going to the school.
they're leaving.
So it's like, what's the point of the quarantine if they're going back in and exposing kids that are based off of the one child being quarantined?
In those initial 4 days that she was already in school, because she was exposed on a Monday and she didn't get called, I got called at like 12:30, I think, on Friday. And then you get credit for those 4 days that you're in there, and so you're already,
Yeah.
the germs are there.
I think to your point too, like, it's a big difference. Like, I've had a couple people approach me. It's a big difference when it's happening once to your family and then twice to your family. And fortunately, I haven't happened to my family. But all of a sudden, you find yourself putting yourself in their seat, and you've got a perfectly healthy boy or girl or student. And I think what we've got balanced as a board, and I agree with Ron and Dr. Penny.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I agree with what Dr. Penny and Ron said. You know, from day one, we wanted our kids in school. We balanced this health department, CDC, education versus health. But I think what we're learning, and we've asked questions, and Mindy has been instrumental, is just trying to figure out what causes what in Dr. Easterday. What's the cause and effect of the mask? What's the cause and effect of the quarantine, the distance? And as we go longer, we're learning more and we can make more educated decisions. Because the other thing I think about is just from the people I've known that have been quarantined, there's a mental, really even a perfect, family model, and you may have, a father and a mother and their kids, and everything's fine, but still there's a mental drain on that student being quarantined. Because anybody that is in isolation, there's a negative effect. So we're trying to balance that, and I appreciate your input and appreciate your courage coming tonight because it is controversial. We get it. Like they said, we're on your side. We understand that it has been very political in nature. We're not trying to make it political. We're trying to do the right thing for the students. And there's no doubt we'll have a discussion about it and try to make the right decision.
Yeah. And it's not an easy one. That's not at all. But just to have a discussion about it, I think is at least a step in the right direction.
Sure.
And
according to our mental health providers that are seeing the local kids, you're 100% right. So they have kids that had presented with no issues with anxiety, depression, that from just the course of this pandemic, I mean, it's weighed on all of us in different ways. I don't think anybody's been unaffected, but we're seeing that in our kids too. They absorb that as well. Then you have those that are already suffering with those challenges, then they're heightened and exacerbated. And for us, as a funder of programs, the schools are our portal because we take away transportation concerns. We take away, especially in a poverty culture, the inability because you're working weird hours and you're stressed and everything else to maintain appointments. And we can reach a child if they have a moment during the day that they're struggling with that derails them and their other classmates sometimes from learning. We can have someone right there to walk and talk them through. Those on the substance abuse side have said that youth that had maintained sobriety or achieved sobriety were relapsing. We don't fund residential substance use programs, but they were reporting this spring having to reopen them not because anything was safer from a COVID perspective, but because kids were dying. So we have to weigh both sides. I will say, in full disclosure, I have not been asked by the health department to share any of our needs assessment mental health specialist findings. I do have a board member that's on my board, so she may be sharing that information, without me. And then one of my board members works for the health department, but I do know she's overtaxed and overextended. I doubt this is the priority on her day-to-day list, but I just want you to know. I don't know how much of the information that I have or that's been reported. I have not been asked to bring anything forward for their consideration or a meeting. So as you have those conversations with the health department, I don't know how much of the mental health data as it affects our youth that they have their fingertips on. They may, I don't know.
Thank you. Any other questions for our our guests. Well, thank you
Thank you so much.
thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
And I'm sure we will be in touch.
Okay. We
I know
appreciate all
I
of
know
you.
we'll see each other at different events and different activities, so thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you.
Anything else, while we are in open session?
No, that's all we have, Mr. Mouse.
Right. See, I think that's all on our agenda. Anything before we adjourn the meeting? Okay, seek a motion to adjourn the meeting. So Randy and Dale, all in favor, aye? Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
The voice from above.
The voice.